Welcome to the Uncensored Self Podcast. I am your host, Ryan Gillen, and on this show, ambitious women learn how to create a life they're obsessed with, without the hustle, without the grind, without torturing ourselves, and without following anybody else's rules. This podcast is all about creating our own rules, owning our identity as creator, and hitting every single goal we set for ourselves. Together, we're redefining success on our terms and building lives that look as good as they feel. Let's dive in. We are winding down the Energetics of Winning podcast with an extremely important conversation around identity. And if I'm honest with you, I think identity, I probably could have led in the whole series with identity because I think it's such an important part of the work, right? And when I say the work, I mean the energetic works, right? The energetics of winning. How do we become an energetic match? It really is, who are we? How do we see ourselves? How do we move through the world? But I also knew that there was a lot of other things on your mind as it relates to business. But this conversation really anchors in everything that we have talked about so far, right? Really understanding how do we become an energetic match to what we want? Because one of the things that I say often to my one-on-one clients in my Uncensored Self-Discovery, which is my high touch VIP experience, is like, who are you when you're not being who the world taught you to be, right? Who are you when you are not being who the world taught you to be is one of the most important questions that you will ask, because when it comes to being an energetic match to everything that you want to call in, I recently read somewhere, fact check me, right? It read somewhere, right? I totally watched a TikTok video about this where somebody said, like, your highest vibration, your highest frequency is one of authenticity. It's one of being true to who you are. And we have been taught literally our entire lives that who we are is not okay, right? That we need to change who we are to be more likable. We need to change who we are to be more professional. We need to change who we are to fit in our industry. And so we are all running around wearing different masks and different parts of different identities that aren't true to us, which is why even when we achieve success like you have, you don't feel excited about that success because that success might not very well have been yours, right? And what I mean by that is it might not be what you wanted, or it might not look the way that you wanted it to, but you were just focused on creating success like the world teaches us to create success, and our identity gets lost in that. And so many of my clients come to me feeling that way. Like, I don't know even who I am anymore, or what I want, or what's important to me, or if we were to take my business away, or my kids away, or my marriage away, I'm not really sure that I'm confident in my identity. And so it is going to be very hard to become an energetic match to winning when you are acting, when you are performing, when you are being somebody who you are not. So let's pull that apart today. Let's dive in a little bit. I'm going to give you some actionable things, and then we're going to have a really long talk about business therapy, really long, right? But I'm going to dive into more the mechanics of business therapy. If you're considering the program and being part of this first round, I kind of want to share with you what I envision for the program. So as I said, we're walking through the world. We have no fucking idea who we are, right? Who are we? Hey, my name is Ryan. I live in Kansas City, Missouri. My partner's name is Derek. My kids are 5 and 8, right? Like, that's what we think our identity is, right? When you say identity and it's like, this is what I do for a living, and this is where I live, and this is my profession, and these are the things that I enjoy. That's not what we're talking about here. When we talk about identity, it's like, who are you at your core, right? Who are you really? And I covered this a little bit in the Energetics of Winning and or the Energy Game, the first session of this series, and obviously in the podcast and other places, but you are an energetic being in a physical body. Who you are at your core is not a name and a place and a geography, right? You are a soul. You are a eternal being that came here in this time-space reality to have this experience of life. So who you truly are is when you strip away those programs and the identities and the rules and the things that you've learned, and you really just tap into your soul, tap into your heart. Who am I really? What is interesting to me really? What do I like really? What do I want really, right? Like, that's your true identity, is a soul, right? But on top of being a soul, you are also the creator of your reality. You are the creator of your reality. We were not taught this, right? This is not something that we're taught growing up, unless you just happen to be raised by really conscious, thoughtful parents. But if not, you have not been taught to believe that you are the creator of your reality. In fact, you have been taught to believe that you are the victim of your circumstances, and that life is happening to you. And here, we are here to tell you, in the energetics of winning, you are not a victim. You are not causeless in any of this. You are actually the creator of your reality. And when you start acting like the creator of your reality, both the good and the bad, right? That is when you get to start consciously creating. So far, you have been unconsciously creating, right? You have been creating based on what the collective needs and wants, or what you think that the person in your physical body doing your actual job or your actual business should need, want, and desire, right? But when we start to pull this back, we start to pull away that identity of real estate agent or entrepreneur or corporate leader or loan officer or whatever it is, right? We start to pull away that identity and we just become the soul. Then we can really tap into our feeling as creator. But on top of just that, we take on roles, right? Wife, mom, entrepreneur, business owner, breadwinner, caretaker, provider. And so we're constantly performing all of the time to fit these roles. And so I'm not saying who you are at your soul isn't a mom, right? Who you are at your soul isn't somebody who wants really big things in this life. I'm not saying that that's not true, but we have taken that on as our personality. And I remember, gosh, some of you are going to hate me for this, but I remember when I was young, before I had kids, I had kids late. I met my ex-husband when I was 29. I don't think I had kids till I was 32. And growing up in the Midwest, that's late, right? Like most of my friends had kids in their 20s, their early 20s. For a lot of people, like I literally, I have a kindergartner and my partner his kids are 24 and 20. We grew up in the same small town in Kansas. But all of this to say, I remember like when I started to get to that phase of life where my adult friends were starting to have kids, and I felt like everybody became moms and then they completely lost their identity. Their entire identity was being a mom. And even when I came onto the entrepreneurial scene, because I had just had Georgia was an infant when I first started my first Facebook group and first started teaching online and like through Facebook Live and things like that when I was teaching sales to new entrepreneurs. And I literally did my first launch with like Georgia literally strapped to my body. And I wound up attracting all of these moms. I'm like, no. Like, mom is just one facet of who I am, right? Like, and I love being a mom. I love my children, but it's not my entire identity. But what I was telling you about my friends is I noticed my friends lost their identity. And I had one friend or a couple that like, she was still a human. And what do you know? She was raised in California. She was not raised in the Midwest, but like even when she had small children, she still loved her career and loved to work out and loved to have fun and loved to do fun things. And I had not seen that model because everybody else I knew had kids and their children became their entire identity and they lost who they were. And so when my friend Jessie, I watched her and I was like, oh, okay, so I can have kids and like still be a person, because I had established a career and a name for myself before I ever got married. And so I was actually pretty anxious about having kids because I didn't want to lose my identity in my children. And that's what we're talking about here, right? Like so many people, their entire life becomes their career, right? Their entire identity becomes entrepreneur or real estate agent or mom. And while that is a facet, it's not truly who you are. So what you actually are is an extension of source energy moving through the world. You are an energetic being in a physical body. You are the creator of your reality. And when you remember that, all of the power comes back to you, right? When you realize that I am not just this human bumbling around through life, taking what comes at me, but I am the one who is in fact projecting my energy out into the world and getting back what I put out, you take back all of your power that you have given away to all of those identities and all of those circumstances and all of those stories and all of that programming. And you can stand in your sovereignty and your agency and really truly be whoever it is that you desire to be, which is really amazing because then we stop reacting to life circumstances like powerless and we start realizing that the world's just mirroring us, right? And that's really the important part of this identity conversation. You're not here to live some pre-scripted identity that was handed to you, right? And that's ultimately who most of us are. If you are an adult in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever it is, your identity, if you haven't done any work on it intentionally, was handed to you by the people who raised you, by the part of the world that you lived in, right? Like wherever you were raised, however you were raised, whatever profession you chose, or whatever that looked like for you, how people talked about money, how they talked about work, how they talked about respect, how they talked about women, how they talked about children, right? Like you were programmed to operate in a certain way, which is why you can go look at families and, they all pretty much do the same thing. They all pretty much make the same amount of money. You can look at generations upon generations, whether it's generations of wealth or generations of poverty, it all looks the same. And it's because it's programmed into us unless you do something different. Your identity was programmed into you unless you decide to do something different. That is what the energetics of winning is about. That is what business therapy is about, is I don't like this program. I would like a new one. And what's really amazing is because you are an energetic being, you are an extension of source energy, you can choose something different. You can choose something different. That's what this information is about. That's what this program is about. This is about is you get to choose. You don't know that, but now you know. Now you know you get to choose how your life unfolds. You get to choose the identity that you desire. You get to choose to be somebody who wins. You get to choose to be somebody who is present with their family. You get to choose to be somebody that does work that you love. And what I love about this and what somebody has said, and I've heard this dozens of times so far on this journey, is like, now that you know this information, like you can't unknow it. Now that you really know and understand you are the creator of your reality, you are an energetic being in a physical body, and most of what you're living so far has been programmed into you without any input from you. And you can change it. You have the keys. You have the keys to the kingdom, right? You have the keys to create the most amazing life on the planet. And if you continue to choose to suffer, you're choosing it at that point because you now know you have the power. So how do we change it? How do we fix it? Before we go into that, of course, we're going to talk about that. I also want to talk about the other side of this, the identity, right? There's the more esoteric part of it, but then there's also the mask, right? This is more our personality than our beliefs. So, obviously thoughts, beliefs, behaviors, those are all learned. Ways we move through the world is conditioned, right? Goals we chase often aren't ours, but I did a whole masterclass with my clients earlier this week, I think it was last week, where I talk about this idea of our personalities, right? Are you funny? Are you smart? Are you witty? Are you sarcastic? Are you a bitch? Like all of those things oftentimes, again, are adapted and conditioned. So aside from just our energetic identity, this is about like who you are as a person. I am somebody who I thought I had to be a bitch to get things done, right? That was what I was conditioned to believe. When I looked around, the people in power were powerful and they were assholes. And so I was like, cool, I can do that. And so I honestly thought personality-wise, I was just a bitch. Like I was like, tough tits. You like it or you don't. And it served me well for a long time until I decided I don't want to be that person. I don't want to have to be a bitch to get things done. I don't want to have to be mean to achieve what I need to achieve. And that's when I realized like, hey, I don't have to do this. And this isn't actually who I am. I am not a bitch, believe it or not. I'm not. It was just an adapted skill, personality trait that I learned would get me what I wanted, but it was not aligned to me, which is why I used that force, that masculine energy, that bitchiness, that ability to walk into a room and command attention, again, from an authoritative way, not from an aligned way, helped me succeed for a long, long time. So putting that down was more challenging than I probably care to admit. But the more I started doing this work, I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that, right? So many people tell stories about like, yeah, I became funny because it was how I got attention. Or I have one client in particular who achievement was what got her, recognition from her parents, right? When she did well in school and she did well in her career, she got a lot of recognition and a lot of praise. So she learned that being good at things and climbing the ladder was how she got attention and how she got love and how she got affection. So she learned to just chase and chase and chase and chase and chase without even asking herself, is this what I want? So that's what I'm talking about. Like most of us are wearing a mask. When we show up on social media, we mask ourselves, right? When we walk into a room, we mask ourselves. When we walk, when we're trading emails, like what is this person going to think? And we're constantly trying to behave a certain way to get a certain reaction, which winds up creating this really transactional relationship with other people, but also with ourselves. Right? Most of us have very transactional relationships with ourselves because we're not honoring who we truly are. So we're like, I'm going to put this mask on. I'm going to put my bitch mask on today so I can get what I need from the world. And then I can't figure out why I'm not happy. Well, when you show up in performance and you're magnetic from that place, because we're all magnetic all the time, right? You attract things you don't like, right? When you show up in a place of, power that you don't like, but you're still always attracting. So that is, again, why so many people have attracted so many things, even good things that don't make you feel good, happy, aligned, fulfilled, because again, you were attracting from an inauthentic place, from a disconnected place, from an identity that isn't yours. Again, chasing what society tells us we should want, or showing up like, oh, that person who is a top producer in my industry, this is how this person shows up, and this is this person's personality, so I'm going to show up with this person. Right? Or, I have this particular profession and people in this profession are seen this way. So I can't be silly and I can't be funny because attorneys are supposed to be serious, right? Or I can't drop an F-bomb because that's not professional. Or I can't be too girly because the room that I'm in is all men, right? These are all masks that we put on to hide who we truly are so that the world responds to us a certain way. And we wonder why we're all lost and unhappy and unfulfilled. It's because we're performing to get a response because that is what the world has taught us to do. And what this is about, what this podcast series and very specifically business therapy is about, is how do we take off that mask and show up as the most authentic version of ourselves that we can be in this moment, right? You will continue to pull these layers back for the rest of your life. I tell every single client who comes into my world this, right? Whether you come into my one-on-one program, whether you come into business therapy, whether you come into, I have a self-study program, it doesn't matter. This work is work that you will do for the rest of your life because there will continue to be layers that come back, right? There will will continue to be stories and programs that you pull apart. This is part of the human experience. We came here for expansion and for growth, right? We came here to really learn who we are. So this is just the beginning of that work. And I say that because, at every level, we learn something new about ourselves, right? At every level of me doing this work over the past 5 years, I've learned something new about myself and who I am and who I want to be. So I know in this moment, I am the truest version of myself I can be, but I know that there's still layers to pull back, right? I know that there are still things that I'm going to learn about myself, and there's possibly things that I want to learn more of or be better at, right? So it's not that we can never change. It's just a matter of, we have to ask ourselves, do we like the way that we're showing up? So the real magic here is, the more you are, the more magnetic you are to things that are aligned to that version of you. So instead of just being aligned with whatever comes your way or whatever everybody else in your industry wants or whatever everybody else in your city wants, neighborhood wants, whatever, you can become a magnetic and energetic match to whatever it is you desire that is very specific to you, because we don't all want the same things. We don't all want our lives to look the same. All the same things aren't important to us. We've just been taught that, right? By TV, by social media, by watching other people, by studying people in our industry, right? So when we can not shapeshift and move through the world in these masks and show up really authentically, it becomes a lot easier to make decisions, to decide what kind of clients we want to work with or what kind of career path we want to be in, and to get really aligned with our goals and what we want out of our life. But right now, most of us are setting goals and deciding what we want out of our lives of an identity that's not ours. It's not ours. It's programmed, it's conditioned, it's learned, it's adapted. It's, behaving in a certain way to get a performance or to get a reaction or to get something out of it. And it's just become really transactional. And so what I want us to be able to do is show up really connected to ourselves, connected to what we want, connected to what's important to us. And to me, this is some of the most brave, courageous work we can do, is to take off the mask and be ourselves. To take off the mask and say to the world, I don't want what everybody else wants. To take off the mask and say, here's my biggest failure, and I'm so afraid that people are going to learn about it, but I'm going to share it with you. Like, that's brave. That's courageous. Putting a mask on and, putting on a suit of armor to show up in the world to get a result isn't brave. It's performing. And I don't know about you, but I'm sick and fucking tired of performing and pretending to like things that I like and like people that I don't like and all this different stuff. And I have found that the more of that I shed, and relationships that I shed, and stories and rules and all these different things, the more fun my life is, because I'm constantly around people I like. I'm constantly doing things that I like. I'm constantly learning more about myself. I've not laughed this much in like decades, it feels like. Derek and I were in the kitchen the other day. I don't know what we were doing. He was cooking, because that's what he does. And I sit at the island and I talk to him while he cooks, and like belly laughing. And I was like, I can't remember the last time that I did this, right? Like, just laughed for the sake of laughing and having fun. And I find, like, the more I pay attention to it, the more of that I do, because I've stopped trying to be somebody that I'm not. I've stopped trying to perform, and I'm just like, this is it, take it or leave it. And I've always had a little bit of a take it or leave it attitude. Like, a lot of you know, if you've been around for a while, like, I've always been very take it or leave it, but it was take what I give you, right? Take what I give you. And now I give you all parts of me. And so part of me is still sassy and sarcastic, but most of me is not, right? Like, most of me is not. Most of me just really wants you to own your identity and be wildly successful and love your life as much as I do. Like, that's genuinely who I am. And again, this is often why so many of us are unhappy despite achieving all of the things, because they're not our things. They're not our wants. They're not our desires. They're not our plan, right? It's just what the world told us we should want, or what we think people in our industry should want, or what our family says is appropriate for us. And I don't know about you, but I'm not okay with that. When I decided to get divorced a few years back, one of the things that I said over and over and over again, it was like my 40th birthday when I woke up and was like, I can't do this anymore. And I realized that I was like, I'm too young. Like, I know that I'm 40, I'm 41 now, I'll be 42 this year. I'm too young. I'm too young. I am too young to not live every single moment of my life. I have too much life left to live to let it be average, to let it be mediocre, because I know at my core that I am not mediocre. I know at my core that I am not average. And I believe you know that too. That's what the energetics of winning is about. How do I become an energetic match for winning? Average people don't win. Winners win. But winners are the truest version of themselves. People who are really winning. There's going to be people who appear successful, that are performing. I should be real clear. This might even be you. I know it was me, right? But there are a lot of people who are performing and they appear to be winning. But when we get behind closed doors, we find out that they're not actually winning. That's the mask that they're wearing. That's the performance that they're doing, or they're telling you they're winning and they're not actually not. Like, I want your life to feel good. I don't give a fuck if it looks good. I want it to feel good. I want your business and your career to feel good. I want you to wake up every single morning excited to work or spend time with your family or whatever's on your agenda that day, and just feel comfortable and good in your skin, right? In your body and your ideas and who you are. But when you run as fast as you run and you work as hard as you work and you're disconnected as you are, you can't possibly do that. And you, like I said, substitute you for me, right? Like this was me. This is so my journey when I realized that so much of what I was doing was performing. And that's really where business therapy, the concept, the idea I've shared with you guys a lot about, Courtney and how business therapy and the name of business therapy came about. But I want to spend some time for those of you that are considering business therapy as your next step in mentorship or in our work together. I'd like to kind of break down what it is and what it's about, because this particular program, as I have shared, is the energetics of success, money, and respect. And the reason why I say success, money, and respect is because that's what most of us really truly want, right? We want to be successful. We want to have enough money to do what we want to do, and we want to be well respected, right? But again, not in an external way. How do we do this in a more energetic way? How do we drive our lives through energy instead of just through effort and force, right? Because again, you've built it all, you've done it all, you've done it. And what you've learned is that, success doesn't feel the way that you thought that it would. And because you were sold the idea that hard work, sacrifice, and suffering was the key to success, that's what you've done. And so you thought if you just worked hard enough, sacrificed enough, and suffered for long enough, eventually you would arrive, but you don't, or you haven't. And so I forget who I was talking to the other day who was like, I just feel like I'm on a treadmill. It was one of my clients, right? She's like, I feel like I'm just on this treadmill and it doesn't stop, and it doesn't ever stop. And no matter how much I do, I just have to keep moving on this treadmill to keep all the pieces running, right? And that's what we want. We want off the treadmill. Right? We want off the treadmill. You don't have to be moving all of the time when you leverage your energy, right? When you're just leveraging effort and force to grow your business, yes, you have to be present in your business all of the time because you are the driving force. When you learn how to pre-pave your goals, your path with your energy, you don't have to be present in it all of the time. You have to take care of it, right? You have to love it. This isn't about like sitting on our meditation pillows and not working, because that's not what any of us desire to do, right? But it is about working less. It's about working on things we enjoy. It's about working with clients we really love. It's about doing a job that we're really good at, not just taking what we can get because that's what we think we have to do. So that's what I mean by that, right? But when we learn to leverage our energy instead of just leveraging effort and force, everything changes, right? The exhaustion, the anxiety, the pressure, the overwhelm, the stress, the, constantly thinking about work all of the time goes away when you pre-pave the path with energy. When you pre-pave the path with your energy, things become so much easier. And that is what I teach inside of business therapy. So I say there's 6 core lessons. As you can tell, the Energetics of Winning podcast series really lines up with those lessons, right? So we start with the energy game, really understanding what does the energy game look like as it relates to your specific goals. And then we move into worthiness, right? The worthiness trap was that one that I don't even know what order I did it in, right? But reclaiming your worthiness, right? Understanding what that means and what that looks like and how do we hold that energy even when we haven't achieved everything that we desire, right? Obviously, we're really going to work on redefining identity, right? Instead of proving and performing, we talk about how do we really own our identity as creator. And then, of course, we're going to cover money, which you did an entire podcast on, rebuilding business on your terms. This is, if you're following along, the rules are made up, right? Really aligning your work with you. What does an aligned business or an aligned career or an aligned whatever it is you do look like for you? And what are the rules that you want to work within? And then the final one is really embodying the version of you that has what you want, right? How do we make success absolutely positively inevitable? By using our energy. Right? So there's 6 core lessons in the program, but the way that I'm breaking it down is I'm actually teaching each lesson in 2 parts. Because I think that we can take such a deep dive into that, right? That we can take such a deep dive into each lessons and the programs and the stories and the loops and the things that we have been told that we're going to pull that apart. So that's why it's a 12-week program. So 6 core lessons, 12 weeks. And then what I'm doing in this first round that is launching in April is I'm going to teach it live. So I'm actually teaching live in one session every week. And then I call them integration calls or coaching calls or activation calls every week as well. So in this first round, you're actually going to get opportunities live with me every single week to really pull this stuff apart, right? When you get triggered, when things come up, the stories that you have, the programming that feels really difficult, right? Those limitations in those stories, you're going to really have a lot of access to me to be able to work through that, which I'm really, really excited about. And then on top of the teaching and the coaching, I use an online platform. So even between calls, you can kind of share your ahas. There's going to be a lot of reflection, a lot of homework, a lot of digging apart and things like that. You'll probably cry quite a bit. I always tell my clients that. Probably going to cry, but So you'll get a lot of, it's a really high touch space. It's a mentorship program, right? Like there's courses, I have self-study programs and things like that, but this is really a mentorship style program because we're going to lock arms for 12 weeks and we're really going to talk about, how do I build success in a way that feels really aligned with the life that I want to live? Because if I had to tell you, like boil it down to one sentence, what is business therapy about? It is about living your life in alignment. And so your life is the overarching thing, right? But inside your life is your work, maybe your kids, maybe your partner, maybe your hobbies, maybe your health and fitness, right? Like, I don't know about you, but most of my life, like I had a conversation this morning in my mastery program with one of my clients. We were talking about balance, right? And like work-life balance was something that we were all taught to want, need, strive for. I don't believe that's true anymore, right? Like for me, I want to have an amazing, outstanding, extraordinary life. And in that life, there are a lot of different things that I get to do. I get to work. Right? I get to be a mom. I get to be a partner. I get to be a daughter. I get to be a sister. I get to be an aunt. I get to be a learner. I get to be a thinker. I get to be a client, right? Like I get to be so many things in this life. And so again, what our world has taught us, and the reason why business therapy exists is that work is the forefront and life is what gets left over, right? This is, we talked about the 40-hour work week was developed in the 20s, right? Like life is what's left over when you're done burning out for what? For money? I'm not okay with that. This is not, I said this before, and I'll say this again, it's not a business coaching program, right? It's not a business coaching program at all. It is how do we master our energy so that we can do business in a way that is aligned with our life. Not how do I build this massive business? You know how to do that. It's how do I build a life where my business is successful enough to support that? How do I build relationships, right? How do I take care of myself? How do I prioritize myself? How do I prioritize my energy so that I can do all of these other things? That's what business therapy is really about. It's how do I be happy again? How do I be myself? How do I hit my goals without losing myself in it? How do I achieve what it is that I want to achieve without working 80 hours a week? How do I show up as the truest version of myself without putting on this mask? How do I finally feel good in my life and in my body and in my work? That's what business therapy is. And I say this because I say this to every single one of my clients. Like, I am not going to change everything in your life in 12 weeks. I'm not. But I'm going to give you the tools that you need to change your life forever. So yes, you're going to experience breakthrough after breakthrough and shit's going to happen fast. Like that's what I love about energy work. It happens so fast, right? I've shared stories before of like clients, once they said yes, or like already seeing change before we even had our first session in my private work, right? So I believe that it happens very quickly, but this is not a program. I said this before too, like that you buy because you need dramatic, rapid transformation in your life, or you're going to not be able to pay your mortgage or not be able to make payroll, right? This is a program that you buy because it's something you're going to live with, a lifestyle you're going to live. That's the word I'm looking for, a lifestyle that you are going to live for the rest of your life. You don't invest in business therapy because there's something wrong with you. You don't invest in business therapy because you need a savior. You invest in business therapy because you are sick and fucking tired of doing things the way that you're doing them right now. You invest in business therapy because you are ready to enjoy your life. You invest in business therapy because you want to enjoy your life and you want to make a shit ton of money and you want to have a business or a career that you love while you do it. That is why you invest in business therapy. And this is so different because, I used to sell sales and marketing. So it was all like, here's the ROI, right? Like, here's what you're going to get. If you invest, I'm going to give you this. And I don't do that anymore because, you get what you put in. You get what you put into any program. So, and not just monetarily. So often we talk about ROI from like a monetary perspective. The way this program is priced, guys, you'd be bananas to not make your money back, one. But two, it's less about money. I am less about the amount of money you make, but if you can tell me at the end of 12 weeks, Ryan, that I am happier, I am lighter, I have more fun, I'm more connected with my partner, I'm more connected with my kids, I'm more connected with my clients, I'm more connected with my work, that is when you're getting an ROI from business therapy. Yes, of course, you're going to make more money because when you become an energetic match for money and an energetic match for winning, it fucking follows. But money is a byproduct of who you become in doing this work. So you join business therapy because you want to become the type of person who has influence, who has impact, who lets their energy do the work for them and makes themselves the number one priority in their life. That's why you invest in business therapy. I'll see you in the next session. Thank you for tuning in to the Uncensored Self Podcast. If you're walking away with a new perspective, some fresh inspiration, or the push you needed to show up as your uncensored self, I'd love to hear about it. Share this episode, leave a review, and don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Remember, success isn't about following somebody else's rules. It's about owning who you are, deciding what you want, and going after it unapologetically. Until next time, keep leading, keep creating, and stay uncensored.